Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the April 27th regular meeting of Council. I'd firstly like to recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council is being held in accordance with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272, and Ministerial Order number M083. Therefore, unfortunately, members of the public are required to observe meetings virtually and not attend in person. Delegation requests for unrelated council matters will not be permitted under this order and throughout the duration of the pandemic. Delegation requests related to agenda matters, such as a developer that would like to come to speak to his or her development permit application, or a member of the public to speak to an item on the agenda, will be allowable as physical distancing requirements could be maintained. The question period will be suspended throughout the duration of this order being in effect. Council will attend via Zoom or in person at these regular council meetings, maintaining physical distancing at all times, as we are tonight. Members of staff that are partaking in the meeting will be spread out in the auditorium in the marked seating or outside in the lobby area. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Snellgrove.
Thank you, Chair. For introduction of late items, Agenda Item 8B, 2020 property tax due dates. Remove the date of 2020 November 12th from Option 2, the advantages of this option, to read all property taxpayers will be provided with some financial relief by delaying the penalty date to 2020-October-01. We're adding Agenda Item 11A, correspondence from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, dated 2020 April 23rd, re protecting vital municipal services.
Thank you very much. A motion for approval of the agenda as amended. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And for purposes of those listening at home, we have 4 councillors who are coming to us via virtual attendance, and I would ask if they are going to be opposing any motions, if they can state, and I will ask at the end of the meeting. Otherwise, I will assume that all votes are positive. That may be the simplest way for me to hear it. Motion for the adoption of the minutes as circulated. Did the agenda, didn't I? Yes. Yes, thank you. Moved Councillor Hemmens, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Motion carries. The next is the Mayor's report. Right off the bat, I want to address the issue we're facing around question period as well, which historically has been held at the conclusion of council meetings. People attending here in person and having an opportunity to ask questions after placing their names on the sheet. Council, through staff in fairness, are working on a solution for that and hope to have it soon that may involve sending the questions in electronically or through other means that will assist people in being able to participate in the traditional ways in which they have in council meetings. I can tell you that council is in the middle of considering the final touches, if you will, to the municipal budget. We have until May 15th in order to provide it in accordance with the law. And we have significant decisions that will have to be made on the upcoming council meetings on May the 4th and May the 11th. And these include obviously property tax options, due dates and penalty date deferrals, potential business relief, and also consideration around city facility leasing and rental relief as well, amongst other things. I want to assure the public that these matters weigh heavily on the council's minds. As all of us face challenges, no one is unaffected by the impact of the pandemic and the economic problems that have followed from that, and so we will do our best and appreciate obviously any contribution that the public makes at this time. I would like to remind everyone that additional physical distancing is being now recommended in parks, and in order to stop the spread, we're recommending that while you're on local parks and trails, obviously where possible, please, in addition to the 2 meters or 6 feet for walkers, city staff are asking joggers to stay 5 meters or 16 feet apart, cyclists to stay 10 meters or 33 feet away from other park visitors. And as well, citizens are reminded to go to the edge of the path or trail to allow for single-file passing when seeing other parks and trails users. These are only recommendations and not health orders, but they are designed to ensure that what is I would say, particularly good record here in British Columbia, but most particularly in Vancouver Island with respect to stopping the spread of the virus, that we maintain a high degree of good citizenship by doing what's best for not just yourselves and your family, but your friends, your neighbors, and other loved ones. It's been quite effective, as I said, and I'm hopeful that we can continue as we get through these times together. I want to remind everyone that the doors, as we say at City Hall, and are closed, but the city itself is open for business. We've changed the way we are conducting business. In Nanaimo, most of the businesses that the public would have done, business that public would have done in person at city facilities can be done online or by phone. Residents, property owners, and businesses can access their accounts, connect with the city, make payments, apply for building permits, and find services without stepping inside to a city building. On the city's mobile-friendly website, www.nanaimo.ca, access personal or business city accounts, connect with different departments. And again, we've also launched building permit applications of all types, which now can be completed and signed online. So please take advantage of that. It's Be Kind to All Kinds poetry project, which we've launched on Instagram. Youth Poet Laureate Velina Zanetti is passionate about the welfare of animals, and in partnership with the BC SPCA and city staff in culture and events, Velina put out a call to youth poets inviting young people to reflect on the BC SPCA's work and humans' relationship to animals and nature. She said, I quote, "I have wanted to collaborate with the BC SPCA for a while, and I'm glad that something has finally come of it." Poems for the project will be posted daily on the City of Nanaimo's Culture and Events Instagram feed at culture_Nanaimo, starting Wednesday, April the 22nd through early May. For those of you who need a good laugh, the mayor's made a contribution, notwithstanding my incredible age and not qualifying as youth, which you can all read in due course. I think it's fair to say that most people and most health experts recognize the relationship to our creatures, if you will, our pets, whatever language you may use is important. And this is an opportunity to encourage young people to engage in some poetry and also reflect on the importance that they play in our lives. And finally, I'm indebted to Councillor Hemmens, who is our representative on the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, who has reminded me to ensure that everyone appreciates that although the regional libraries may be closed, they are still open for business as well. For instance, online registration. You can get online registration for anyone who wants to take advantage of the Vancouver Island Regional Library's amazing online resources. A library card is obviously your gateway to ebooks, audiobooks, streaming movies and TV music, and much more. And since launching that in late March, almost 1,000 people have signed up for new memberships. 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Wi-Fi to help everyone stay connected. The regional library is now offering 24/7 Wi-Fi outside their branches for as long as they're able to. Those taking advantage of the service are reminded to follow all social distancing protocols, please. In terms of the e-library, they've added an unlimited copies of ebooks and audiobooks available in a wide selection of popular titles, no holds, no wait list, and has significantly expanded the titles available. Customers have responded with a 50% increase in ebook downloads and increasing access across the e-library, including online learning, streaming music, and more. Around educational resources, teachers and homeschoolers can find free educational ebooks for students from kindergarten to high school. No library card is required to access Tumble Books. And obviously, at this time when parents across the city are helping educate their children, that is a very important resource. And they've also announced happily that they've reached out to partners across the service to ensure that everyone has opportunities to engage with the library, including the business community, newcomers, Indigenous communities, families, and more. So again, a reminder, the doors may be shut, but the libraries are open for business. It's just like so much of what we are all doing we're doing things in a very different way, and we will be doing so for a while yet, and who knows, maybe we'll be doing it that way permanently. Finally, I want to also recognize that it's been a little over a week since this country dealt with the dreadful news out of Nova Scotia. Council city flew its flags at half-mast at City Hall in recognition. We extend particular sympathies in this community to the members of the RCMP, who, when they take the oath to serve, obviously place themselves potentially in situations such as was faced by a very fine young officer who died in the line of duty during that murderous rampage back east. As I said last week briefly at a less formal council meeting, it has offended our sense of this country that these things should happen here, and particularly at a time when so many Canadians are facing so many stresses. But if there is ever a time to reaffirm our belief in what this country was founded on, the basic principle of peace, order, and good government, it is now. To recognize that we are a society of law and rules, that we owe one another respect and love and support when things are grim and tough and hard, as it is particularly for the people of Nova Scotia and those families who have been impacted by that murderous rampage. But for all of us now to reaffirm our belief in one another, our ability to be kind and strong and caring and giving when it's most required of all of us. I'm thinking today particularly of a close friend of my wife's from university whose father passed away today in a long-term care facility with no ability for his family to say goodbye. That is impacting many families across this country, and certainly in this province and in Vancouver Island, where we do have a much older population potentially. So again, I want to emphasize that when you talk to somebody, you don't know what burdens they may be carrying. It may be something from a holiday that was planned for years that didn't happen. It may be a university graduation that a whole family looked forward to that they won't be able to attend. It may be a wedding. It may be a funeral. It may be all kinds of events. So in this community, I just want to say on behalf of Council, we are proud of the efforts all of you have made, whether it's simply ensuring you distance yourself in our parks, whether you communicate with people who may be lonely and need your support, whether you're volunteering to deliver groceries or provide assistance to those in greater need than yourselves. It is a time of great stress, but it is a time to celebrate our humanity. Thank you for listening to this rather rambling report tonight. I just think it's difficult on all of us as we're separated from family and loved ones by the physical distancing that is become our daily practices, that we remind each other we may be apart physically, but we're not apart emotionally, and we will come through this together at the end of the day. Ms. Gurry, no consent items. We have reports. The first is Ms. Legan, 2020 City Facility Leasing and Rental Relief. Ms. Legan, one of those topics we have to face as Council.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just briefly review what was in the information report at the prior Council meeting, just to refresh everyone's memory. The decision in front of you is consistent with the COVID-19 Financial Response Relief and Recovery Framework Work Plan that we put forward on April the 9th. This is a decision with respect to the city facilities, mostly parks, recreation, and cultural facilities that have been closed to abide by the health mandate and directives that have been issued. We budget $374,000 for these facilities and those that are closed. And with them being closed, the complementary businesses that are in them are not able to operate and cannot secure any revenues. We're recommending that the rent and lease be foregone until at least the end of December if the COVID-19 situation persists, effective starting April the 1st. So it would be April through to the end of December, and that would be a revenue loss to the city of $245,380. It includes those that are closed, the facilities that are closed, as well as one extraordinary situation, which is 285 Prideaux, the Community Services Building.
Thank you, Ms. Legan. Councillor Brown moves the recommendation. Councillor Hemmens seconded. Councillor Armstrong?
I noticed in the recommendation that there's not a date. Is that remiss, or are we just leaving it blank until we can reassess?
For the start,
No, for the end date.
for the end, what we have done is recommended that it would be until the end of December or sooner. And if there's resumption sooner with respect to the building's reopening, it would be a prorated rent. So if it opened on the 17th of the month, it would be a prorated.
So I'm wondering if we should have a date in there then, an end date, and then reassess.
At this point, the end date is contemplated to be December 31, 2020. We'd have to bring something back if it persists beyond then.
It is our fiscal year, and I'm
So could we
thinking,
make an
Councillor
amendment?
Armstrong, I don't know, I think we can extend our confidence in the mercy of staff to do the right thing. In fact, if they can end it earlier, and it may well be that some of our tenants may not be in a position to continue to occupy the premises in any event. Unless I hear any further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Hearing none opposed, motion is, I assume, carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Ms. Legan, one of the busy people. Next item, property tax due dates.
I'm going
And
to
you're
turn it over.
going to defer to Ms. Mercer.
I am, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mercer, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is, again, another carry-forward discussion from our council meeting last week regarding property due dates. So just to recap, as you all know, we must adopt a property tax bylaw before May 15th of each year. And as well as under the municipal tax regulation, the city must charge a 10% penalty on outstanding current year taxes. So if this was a normal year, we would be charging, our taxes would be due on July 2nd, which is the first working day after July 1st, and we would be issuing the 10% penalty in two 5% due dates. So one would be July 3rd, the day after the taxes were due, and one again about 6 weeks later. So on May 16th, the province came out with some new relief instructions for businesses and local governments. And one of those was where they reduced the school tax rates for all business class properties, and they delayed the penalties on these properties until October 1st. And in that announcement, they also announced that property or school tax payovers for municipalities would be due at the end of the year, and normally we start paying those over at the end of July. So based on this new information, staff would recommend that council keep the tax due date of July 2nd, so it's a soft due date, and this will help with cash flows for the city, because we're hoping that people who can pay will, and that will help us with our cash flows, and extend the tax penalty due date on all properties, all property classes till October 1st, and have 5% on October 1st, and then 5% 6 weeks later. And that's the same schedule that we would have if we had them in a normal year, 6 weeks apart. And this would make it an equitable alignment for all property classes, and it simplifies everything from an administrative point of view as well. So I will turn it back to council for discussion.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. I have councillors Turley and Thorpe that would like to speak in that order.
Please, and we'll go in that order. Councillor Turley and then Councillor Thorpe, please.
Positive comment here that this proposal also makes it possible for all property classes to do installment payments, i.e. four payments over the 4 months, provided you make the last payment on September the 30th at no cost or penalty. So I I think this is a great opportunity for cash flow issues in commercial properties that at least make smaller payments at a time rather than one big large lump sum. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Turley. Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I think Ms. Legan actually gave most of my arguments. I'd like to move the recommendation first, then I'll speak to it if there's a seconder.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Ms. Legan said, this basically just aligns all classes with the same treatment because of the commercial properties already having this benefit of delayed penalty. So I certainly support this. I think it's a reasonable compromise for everybody. And other point I believe that Ms. Legans did make is that, of course, our taxation collection is the basis of our city cash flow. And so I would encourage those who are able to pay their taxes as soon as possible to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thorpe. Ms. Gurry?
Councillor Bonner wishes to speak.
Councillor Bonner. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Gesselbrock, and then I'll go to Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just support the recommendation. I think that we need to do everything possible to support businesses and individuals that have been impacted by the shutdowns. And yeah, cash flow is a big issue. So I'm grateful that we were able to provide a little bit of relief in this way. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if we can't do a little bit more to help the taxpayers here. I can see the first date that aligns up with the what the province has asked us for, but I'm wondering if we couldn't bump back the second date to December 1st. And what I'd like to do as well is look at changing the amounts, the penalty to 1% on October and then 9% on December 1st. I was wondering if how that would affect the tax payments or penalties as we see fit.
Through your
Ms.
worship,
Mercer.
to Councillor Bonner, there is no requirement in, the legislation that says it has to be 5 and 5. Council can choose to split that up how they like. However, if you want to have enough of an encouragement to pay the taxes at the due date, otherwise you might as well extend that date a little bit longer if you split it up. But it is within council's right to do that. It's just, it gives less of an encouragement for people to pay on the due date. Bumping it out to December 1st, again, that's within council's purview to do. We just run into, it starts to get close to year end, and then there's a lot of administrative work that goes in with getting that. So we would prefer an earlier date just to get our administration side in, get that all straight for year end. But again, it is in council's, it's in your power to do that.
If I may ask a follow-up on Councillor Bonner, I'll come back to you, Councillor Bonner. The school tax that we collect on behalf of the province, that date has been extended to October the 1st.
It's the school tax, we don't have to pay till the end of the year. So right. December 31st is the date. They haven't specified a date, they just said at the end of the year. So we're assuming it's around December 31st.
But there's no penalty charged on that per se. I'm just.
Yes, if there is, no, there's no penalty. School tax is included in your total notice. So if you have outstanding taxes, it would be included on that.
And that's what I'm getting at. Okay, no, it's all right, just ignore me. I'm just trying to think this through, but I am concerned about the suggestion of the date so late in the year in terms of staff being able to administer it, because candidly, we're looking at trying to keep city expenses in line, and this doesn't get accomplished by gremlins and elves, it gets accomplished by staff who actually have to do the work.
Your Worship, we have Councillors Martman and Thorpe that wish to speak, and I'm not sure if Councillor Bonner wishes to speak again.
I'll go back to you, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. And I can understand staff's position on this in terms of year end. I'm flexible on that. My concern here is that in past years, people didn't pay their taxes, and there may have been a number of reasons. And I can pretty well guarantee this year, those people who aren't paying their taxes probably can't afford it. And so all I'm asking is that maybe we could bump back the overdue costs, the overdue charges to the later date, just to give people a little bit more time to get enough money together to pay their taxes. I think this year is much different than previous years. Thank you.
So, Councillor Martman?
Thank you. I will disagree with Councillor Bonner. I like the idea of option one and keeping it simple. I believe that commercial businesses have to October 1st. We're keeping that the same. I think if you take it past the mid-November, then you start to get into it's so close to Christmas time, et cetera, et cetera. Not that I know what Christmas is going to be like this year, but I just don't think it's that big of a difference. I like the idea of keeping it simple and being able to move forward in a timely manner for staffing for year end. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Well, thank you. I'm in favor of the original motion. I think it's fair and it helps everybody. And I think we do have to realize we will be starting into our budget cycle as well, which will make everybody busy, and I don't think our staff really has the capacity to do both at the same time. So I know I hear what they're saying, and so I would agree with the original motion. And the 5%, same thing, we still need money to function, and there are many people that will be able to pay because it's only been the 2 months. There's going to be some that can't. I'm more concerned about next year's, to be quite honest. Thank you.
Ms. Gurry.
Councillor Thorpe.
Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I agree with the comments of Councillor Martman. I think we're better served to just keep this consistent with the same date. And I need to point out, Your Worship, that there is a motion on the floor that's moved and seconded, and I feel we're getting dragged sideways into other variations and options, which if Council wishes to do would require amendments and dealing with this original motion first.
Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Councillor Thorpe. I was just going to say that when everybody had their chance to speak, that if Councillor Bonner wishes to move forward with this, he would need to make an amendment, a motion, like an amendment to the motion.
Councillor Bonner, do you wish to make a motion? See if we can find a seconder.
Sure, Your Worship. My amendment would be to change the not to change the due dates, but change the overdue amount to 1% on the first due date and 9% on the second.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Brown? Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the original motion of 5 and 5, and I think anyone that's struggling to pay their taxes, and we know there are going to be a number, dividing it 1% in October and then 9% in November, I don't think is actually going to provide any relief. It's just shifting the burden of having to pay that when they can't pay that down the line. I think this is a nice kind of middle road of we're extending the timelines, we're giving options for penalties, et cetera. So I won't be voting in support of this motion.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment? Councillor Brown and anyone else?
Councillor Bonner?
Councillor Bonner.
I assumed. Anyone else? And those opposed? Councillors Thorpe, Martman, Turley?
Councillors Thorpe, Martman, and Turley are opposed.
Are opposed. The motion is defeated. We are back to the main motion. All those in favor? Any opposed?
There's no one opposed.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Mercer. The next, Mr. Lindsay, the subject, Deputy Subdivision Approving Officer.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening. We're here this evening to seek Council's resolution for the support of appointing Claire Negrin as a Deputy Subdivision Approving Officer for the City of Nanaimo. Your Worship, as outlined in the report under Section 77 of the Local Government Act, a municipality must appoint an approving officer who is then in turn responsible for the review and approval of subdivision applications in the city. Ms. Negrin is just recently accepted the position as subdivision manager with the city, just starting in the last couple of weeks. And as part of her role is the title of Deputy Approving Officer. So we're here this evening to seek that support. For Council's information, the city has for many years operated under the framework of having one approving officer with two deputy approving officers. Mr. Holm, who's here with me this evening, and as your Director of Community Development, is your approving officer, and this would add to the already existing capacity for staff to review and approve subdivision applications. Thank you.
And which would ultimately mean we get things out the door faster, potentially in the absence of anyone due to illness, COVID-19, or anything else. Ms. Gurry.
Councillor Turley wishes to speak.
Councillor Turley.
You just need to stand.
Yes, sorry, I was just sending a message to Ms. Gurry that my question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Move the recommendation.
Seconded. Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is Covenant Amendment Application Number CA11-6340 McRobb Avenue. Mr. Lindsay again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application will likely look familiar to Council as it was on your agenda just last month, just at the time that this whole COVID pandemic was starting. And at that time, we were very much operating under business as usual. And we had an application before you for a covenant amendment that under council policy, it's important to note, not under legislation, but under council policy, was being forwarded to a public hearing. Given the current context that we're in today, staff are recommending that council amend their practice, in this case not forward this item to a public hearing, but instead use a system more closely compared to a development variance permit where we'll provide notice to the neighbors who can provide comment in writing or in person to council, and then it proceed directly to an upcoming council meeting for your deliberation and consideration.
And just to emphasize for those who are listening, what this means is it will come back before council again. This is not a final decision.
That is correct, Your Worship. And in the meantime, we'll do notice with the neighborhood, and I give them opportunity to provide comment and input, which will ultimately come back to council, which you can weigh as part of your consideration.
Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Armstrong.
Speak to it.
Councillor Armstrong, you wish to, Councillor Brown, you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, my concern is I've heard lots of concerns from community about this. How far will we be distributing notices? I mean, the concerns I hear go as far up as Turner Road because that's a road that's used frequently.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to have Mr. Holm remind me, so under a notification bylaw, we do adjacent properties in 10 meters, so basically the opposite side of the road and adjacent properties. In this case, of a context of a block that has relatively large parcels, what will happen is that we'll pick up each of the major stratas in and around this site, and I think it will include most of those neighbors that we've heard previously from.
Thank you.
Ms. Gurry?
Councillor Thorpe wishes to speak.
Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be supporting the staff recommendation on this, but a point of information, as you recall, last week on Thursday, the Minister of Municipal Affairs indicated that early this week, either Monday or Tuesday likely, we would be receiving a new ministerial order regarding public hearings. The indication was very strongly that the government would be putting forward guidelines for virtual public hearings, but probably not in-person public hearings. So that's something I bear in mind when I look at this item and another one later on in our agenda. I'm comfortable with the fact that in this case, the public will have an opportunity to provide comment on this. So for that reason, I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. The next is Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 400-2665 Lynburn Crescent. Mr. Lindsay again, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to hand this one over to Mr. Holm to walk you through the application and specifically the requested variance.
Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Good evening. So this is a development variance permit for property that's on the corner of Cosgrove and Lynburn. And the requested variance relates to a proposed extension of an upper story deck over top of a carport. So there's specific requirements in the zoning bylaw, additional setback requirements for carport and garage door face. The actual building setback for the property from Lynburn is 4 meters. That's the required building setback. Where a carport face or garage door face faces the street, the requirement's pushed back to 6 meters. So the request here is for relaxation from 6 meters for the carport, the front face of the carport, to 4.46. So it'd still be consistent with the building setback, the building envelope setback of 4 meters. What I'm trying to indicate is that somebody could build a building within that envelope up to the 9-meter maximum permitted height. That's not what they're asking for in this case. They're asking for a carport to be able to be extended closer to the street than the 6 meters is required, down to 4.46 meters, and to extend an open deck over top of that. That's the requested variance, and staff supports the requested variance. There's a site plan if you're interested on page attachment C, page 50 of the agenda. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock, did you wish to? Please.
Your Worship, just Councillor Martman wishes to speak. I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll go to Councillor Gesselbrock, then Councillor Martman.
Thank you, Worship. My question, just to clarify then, that we received some concerns about, the deck, if it had a covering and umbrellas, that it would be blocking the view of people behind. But if I'm hearing correctly, that the house is permitted to build a second story right up to the 4 meters if they so choose, this is actually a bit back from that and does not have a second story on it yet, but is that correct?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Gesselberg, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martman? Councillor Martman?
You're on mute, Councillor Martman.
Sorry about that. No, I was just saying the question was asked and answered, so I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone care to make the motion?
Councillor Turley wishes to speak. I'm not sure.
Sorry, Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 questions. Number one, does this prohibit the addition of a carport door being put on the structure in the future? And I did take the time to drive around that area a couple of days ago, and the gentleman's letter indicated it blocked his view, and I guess the best description of the view is a glimpse, because there is a tall cedar tree blocking it one side and a tall Japanese maple on the other side. So I'm not sure that he has a valid point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. Ms. Gurry?
And Your Worship, I'm not sure if there's anybody that could be physically distancing appropriately or outside that may wish to speak.
Yes, I should ask, obviously. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to DVP 400? I don't see anyone. We have the neighbor's letter. Everyone's had a chance to see it. Councillor Brown is moving the recommended motion. Councillor Hemmens is seconding. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, Ms. Gurry. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is development permit application number DVP 401-27 Milton Street. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm also going to turn this one over to Mr. Holm to walk through the application and the variance.
A man who needs no introduction.
Thank you again, Your Worship. So this is a development variance permit for 27 Milton Street, and the proposal is to add a second-story addition to an existing single-family dwelling. The proposal is to include a fairly steeply pitched roof, 812 pitch. There it is, thank you very much, on the screen overhead. And you can see actually the portion of the requested variance is a height variance from 9 meters to 10.22 meters, so 1.22 meter variance. And you can actually see the portion outlined in green on the image on the screen that would be over height. So it's actually quite a small portion of the roof peak that would be over height that would allow a more steeply pitched roof to allow the second story addition with building area in the roof. No anticipated view impacts would be resulting from the proposed variances, and it's supported by staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Is there anyone wishing to speak to DVP 401? This is a nice surprise. Good evening. If you could introduce yourself and give us your address.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kasia Vegan. I'm the owner of 27 Milton Street. And I'm just simply here if you have any questions regarding the application. Thank you.
I don't believe so. I think we're all sold on the beauty of the drawing.
You can thank my husband for that. Thank you.
Anyone? Councillor Brown making the recommended motion. Seconded. Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Looks like a nice addition to the neighborhood. The next is rezoning application number RA 449-5801 Turner Road. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Worship. This is also an application which I think Council is familiar with. Previously given first and second reading and directed to proceed to public hearing, again, right at the time that our pandemic and our health emergency started. As Councillor Thorpe mentioned earlier, we understand that there is going to be some further directives that come out from the province this week. Of course, at the time that we authored this report, we weren't aware if they were going to be taking further if we were going to receive any further direction at all. So in this case, we've recommended that under the current legislation, there is the ability for council to waive public hearings where it's felt that the rezoning application is consistent with the OCP. And in this case, because it's a site-specific application for retail use in an area that's designated retail under the official community plan, we're recommending that council waive the public hearing. As per the legislation, when council decides to waive a public hearing, there is still notices provided in the paper of council's intent, and it still proceeds after that to the normal process of third reading. Thank you, Worship.
Ms. Gurry.
Councillor Turley wishes to speak.
Councillor Turley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm having a bit of a challenge with this particular one because all the previous ones, and they're in excess of, I don't know how many we've gone through with cannabis, but they all had to go through the process. And I think, given that there's new recommendations coming down the pipe this week, we might be advisable to hold off on this until next week so we know what the actual protocol is going to be, rather than going ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Turley, do you wish to make a motion to defer this till next Monday, the 4th?
Yes, I would, please.
Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Hemmens close behind. Any discussion on the motion to defer this to the next meeting? Councillor Brown. Oh, pardon me, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. I won't be supporting the deferral. I think we should just get on with it. These are just retail stores. At the end of the day, there's a lot of regulations about retail stores. So I will not be supporting the deferral, and if it does not pass, I will be moving the motions as is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong?
I'll be supporting the deferral. I think it's important to get the public opinion on this, as we've been doing them for them all. It's not like a one-off. So I think it's really important for 1 week, and especially if there's going to be a means for a public hearing. I noticed we've had people against this, so I'd like to hear more from them. And also, I've been consistent in not approving those that don't fall within our guidelines, and this one doesn't. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmens?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we had some correspondence on this, this one in particular, and when someone asks for an opportunity to come before council and speak about a development, I think we owe it to them. If it's a week's delay, then why not?
Councillor Thorpe wishes to speak.
Sorry, Councillor Thorpe?
Councillor Thorpe, yes.
Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, I will support the motion to defer for the reasons that Councillor Turley mentioned. I'm not comfortable with this one until we have a public hearing and allow the public a chance to speak. And presumably we will be getting guidelines to allow that to happen in the near future. So I'm quite happy to put this off for a little while. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to defer till next Monday, the 4th? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of deferral? Councillors Armstrong, Krogh, and Hemmens, and the others, the 4 of you?
No, Councillor Bonner
3 of us.
does not have his hand raised yet, so for in favor. Councillor Bonner does not have his hand raised for in favor of the deferral. So
And those opposed to deferral?
So those opposed, Councillor Bonner, Brown, Gesselbrock. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And Your Worship, just for clarification from my perspective, and maybe Mr. Lindsay, or he gets it and I don't, defer to next week. However, if we get direction this week regarding public hearings, are we just reporting back to you next week that the public hearing will proceed with this item on it?
Mr.
Or
Lindsay.
when the next public hearing is scheduled, or?
Yeah, Your Worship, we're guessing somewhat like everybody else is about what exactly the directive is, but there's been some suggestion that there'll be guidelines around holding virtual public hearings. So the question will come next week to council. The options would be to either continue with the recommendation of this report, which was to waive the public hearing, or to establish a process of having a virtual public hearings if in fact that is the guideline, and that this item be deferred there. But we'll know more as the guidelines come out this week, and we'll be able to report back to council on your options.
In the fullness of time, Victoria will give us a direction. Thank you very much. The next is 507 Milton Street, amendment of project under the revitalization tax exemption bylaw. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Late last year, council actually endorsed the inclusion of this property within your tax exemption program for downtown. It is for a 27-unit mixed-use development at 507 Milton Street. A condition of being brought within the program was that they must have a building permit in place no later than December the 7th. Unfortunately, they were unable to meet that deadline and have now completed the requirements to obtain a building permit, but have asked for the exemption program to be amended and have a date of July 1st of this year in order to get a building permit. So, Your Worship, we're supportive of the amendment to this project to allow it to proceed.
Councillor Armstrong.
Move the recommendation.
Seconded Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? None? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And finally, the Economic Development Task Force update. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we originally had drafted this report a week or two ago now, it was with the intent of coming to council and seeking your support on lifting the moratorium and allowing the work of this committee to continue. That somewhat became unnecessary with your motion last week to restart all the committees. So we've amended this report slightly and no longer seeking that specific direction, but we did want to take the opportunity to provide update and let council know that important works are continuing on both the finalization of an economic development strategy and a framework for an external economic development agency. So that work needs the support of the task force, and we're happy to hear that council's allowed for it to continue. So we look forward to completing your work and getting back and updating council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry.
Councillor Turley wishes to speak.
Councillor Turley, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to pass along my compliments to whoever authored it. It looks like it was Bill Corson that did this report. It's excellent, and the question I have is if it hasn't already been forwarded to the task force members, could it be?
Absolutely, Your Worship. Be happy to do that.
Consider it done,
Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you.
If no further questions, comments, then we're on to bylaws. The first is zoning amendment bylaw number 2019, number 4500.162. Ms. Gurry?
Your Worship, so normally the acting mayor would read this out.
I appreciate that. And
Yeah, so that's Councillor Turley, then the next is Councillor Markman, and the next is Councillor Thorpe. And so they're all online, so I'm not sure if Councillor Armstrong would be willing to read those out. Well, she's here.
Councillor Armstrong filling the breach. God bless you.
Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2019, number 4500.162, to rezone 847 Bruce Avenue to allow cannabis retail store as a site-specific use in the neighborhood center CC2 zone be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Contrary? Carried.
Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2020, number 4500.173, to remove the definition for drug addiction treatment facility, amend the definition of office medical dental to exclude supervised consumption sites, and add a definition for supervised consumption sites be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next is revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw 2020, number 7308.
Motion that revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw 2020, number 7308, to provide for temporary borrowing of funds required to meet the current lawful expenditures of the City of Nanaimo be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have no notices of motion. The next is other business. It's correspondence from, the bylaw status sheet is for information only. Didn't mention that. On to notices of motion. We have none. Other business, correspondence from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities dated 2020, April 23rd, protecting vital municipal services. Any comments, questions about this? None. Thank you very much. I'm happy to entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved, Councillor Hemmens. Seconded, Councillor Gesselbrock. All those in favor, motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. We are adjourned.